Okay, so I'm going to continue on with what we were doing on our previous video around showing some of the different ways we can manipulate the data. So in the first video, what we did is we took a large data set and divided it into two based upon gender. So what we did is we created two tables, created one for men, one for women, phased it out. So what we're doing is, in that case, we're doing like a select and reduction of the data, which and then sorting it along the results. So that gives us a kind of a first cut analysis. But there's other ways we can approach this analysis. So what I want to do is, rather than deleting data. So obviously, if we think about your normal distribution. All right, where you've got the mean, which describes the middle, and then you've got the two tails. What we talked about in the last time is really looking at the stuff that's in the tails. The lowest versus the highest. Okay, we can do things like calculate the lowest versus the highest, and then the difference between them, and kind of see if that tells us what insights that might yield. But the other thing we can do, though, we have all the stuff that's in the middle, all right? And what do we do about that? How can we analyze that or reorganize that? And if we look at our data, we'll look at the men. All right, so where I'm at right now is I'm going to transform, we'll do the transform of that data. So I'm on the men's table. Open powerlifting men, and if we look, we still have something on the order, when we divide it in two, is something to the effect of about 90,000 records here. Oh, hang on. So there's about 90,000 records here. It's in this set. All right, so what I'm going to want to do with this is I want to be able to analyze it. Well, I want to be able to, I don't want to cut data out. What I want to do is I want to kind of see how this stuff, how the data can be, like, for example, if I do an aggregation based upon averaging. So what I want to do is, like for Algeria, is add all of these numbers together and divide by the number of entries we recorded for Algeria, which will give me the average of the total weight lifted, the average of the best three deadlift, the average of the best 3 kilogram, so on and so forth. All right. And then maybe I can break it out if I want. I can break it out by country. I can break it out by equipment, and some of that. So how do we do this? Okay. So once again, as we said, one of the challenges with Power BI is that we have lots of different ways to be able to do stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new table here. So let me duplicate this table. I'm going to duplicate it. So we'll create a new one. And I'm going to rename this. So let's call this one Open Powerlifting by Country. Men by country. All right, that's just the name. All right, so this is going to be the table I'm going to work with. And what I want to do is, for this one, what I want to do is I want to go through all my records here. I want to reduce, I want to get an average for every country. All right, so Algeria and Argentina, and obviously some are pretty big. The United States is a really large data set. All right. So how do I do that and I don't want to delete anything. So what we'll do is we'll use the group by for this, okay? So I'm going to create I'll do a group by for this function. And what I'll do is I'm going to do advanced. All right. And what I'm going to say is specify the columns to group by one or more outputs. So what I'm going to do is, well, we've already split the table by sex, so we don't have to worry about that. I'm going to do it by country. All right, we'll just do one. And what I'll do is I want to do an average. And what I want to do an average of, we'll do total weight. So weightlifting. And I'll call this new column AVG. TAL. Okay, so the way we would read this would be, for each country, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read all of the entries. I'm going to read all of the total weight entries by country, all the detail, create an average, and create a column called average total weight. All right, so if I do OK, let's see what we get. All right, so what I have is I now have a new table, or I've adjusted this table here. All right, and you'll see what we've done. We've done a grouped rows. All right, Algeria, on every country. So I got my average total weight. So that was, I added up all the entries. We added up all of our entries, and then we can see who has the largest average weight. So if I do a sort, actually I want to do a sort descending. Okay, so I've got some interesting numbers here. So Montenegro is number 1, USSR is number 2, Russia is 14, United States is, let's see, where's the US in here? All right, now, part of the stuff we run into is some of the data that we're looking at here. So USA is actually down here, 651, all right? So one of the things, though, if we look at the data for Montenegro, what we would see is it's actually a much smaller number of entries versus, say, for example, the United States or Russia, which actually has a larger number of data. But anyway, just play around with this a little, we'll kind of play around. So let's go back. So what I'm going to do is I want to come back here to my grouped rows, and I'm going to double click my grouped rows. And what I want to do is I want to add some stuff to it. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a group. So I'm going to do by country. I'm going to aggregate by country. I'm going to add another aggregation, and I'm going to aggregate by equipment or age. No, do equipment. All right, and what I'll do is I'm going to do some additional calculations. What I'll do is I will average, and let's do squat, and I'll call this AVG SQUAT. I'm going to add another one. We'll say bench. And I'll add a third one. Third one will be also average. Deadlift. AVGEAD. Deadlift. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken my first level analysis, and I'm doing a new iteration on this. I'm elaborating on it. So what I've got is I have country, I have equipment. All right, And then I have 4 columns. All right, so what I'm going to do is I want to average, I want to get the average broken out by country and equipment for the average, the total weight, squat, bench, and deadlift. All right, so I'm going to execute this. I think they've got that. If I do a return, and you'll see it'll come back, and I now have this additional data. Okay, so as you can see, we now have an average broken out by equipment. So I have 3 records for Algeria, 1 for each type of equipment, and we have the average for each one, for each type of equipment. All right, so as I said, you can use, so the idea would be is now if I sort this on my average total weight, I'll sort descending. All right, so Moldavia is number 1 now. Now, depending upon the type of equipment, what will happen is this will sort this into by average total weight. Now, one of the things you want to kind of take a look at with your data is, how many records you have, because what will happen is a fewer number of records could actually skew. So you might want to evaluate, something you might want to do when you're doing the, when you're creating the analysis would be to sort the number, get a count of the number of records that are going to your analysis. Anything that, doesn't hit a cutoff, maybe 1,000 or something like that, maybe drop those off, because otherwise what will happen is, you could actually end up kind of throwing things off. Your numbers would be skewed. So, if Moldavia, because it looks like there's whether Moldavia is really, it was just a one-time deal, or, we had one person came in there, had a good afternoon, but the reality is, on average, the numbers are, if I compare that against maybe like the 20,000 records I have in the U.S., I would argue that the 20,000 records I have in the U.S. would probably give us a more accurate representation of what the total data, of what the actual characteristics of the results are. All right, and I think that will hopefully get you through. Now, what I'll do at the end here is I'm just going to do and apply and close. And it will now build out my new table, my average. So my open powerlifting men by country. Let me men by country. Here's my, and then what we can do is we can format this. Where's my format? Format is going to be a decimal number. Which will clean this up immensely. So as you can see, this reduces our the numbers of records. It's now broken out by equipment and by country and by equipment type. All right, and I can filter if I only want to see my raw. That'll give me my, and so I have one entry per. That's all of the that's all the countries filtered by that particular type of equipment. All right, so hopefully that's going to help you out a bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at some of the other data we've got submitted and kind of play around with that as well, kind of see what we can do with it. All right, but that's it for now.